we've had this education that he's just given us the history of, and then we're the ones who let it go. Not just America, but we let it go recently. It is part even of American history, and we're a very young country.
Welcome to Classical Etc. You are in the studio with Memoria Press.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Classical Etc. I'm Jessica Aboud, and you've got the core four with you today: Paul, Tanya, and Martin. Hey, everybody, we got some pep in our step. Spring is here.
Absolutely. We are so peppy.
Paul and I were up late with the guests last night. There was no pep.
No pep in our step.
Pep?
No.
Oh, well, we'll bring it. Tanya.
We'll bring the pep.
Yeah, here we are.
I just
I'm
watched
not
a
sure
few
that's a good
minutes of the podcast we did in Cincinnati that popped up on
it was
my
fun.
feed.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, I look like I'm wearing my entire wardrobe because it was so cold in the convention center. And I had a dress on and I had leggings on my legs and I had this jacket on and a blazer.
It's cold.
I'm like, why? Look at all of the clothes. I looked like a crazy person.
We did the podcast live at GHC Cincinnati, and it was really fun. It was fun to talk to people's questions live.
Yeah.
I had a good time.
I enjoyed it too.
Mm-hmm.
Next time I won't put as many, or I'll take off a couple of layers before we start.
Don't do it on screen.
That would be, yeah, right.
I had plenty on. I could have peeled several off and would have been fine on screen.
Oh, moving on. Well, what are we reading these days, guys?
Well, we got the new Malcolm Guite book in, Galahad and the Grail. And I will read that again. Every time I pick it up, I'll open it up to some page and I'll start reading, and I don't want to stop. It's really good.
It's just so musical.
Yes, it is. And then I have vowed, I promised Kyle that I'm going to read The Last of the Mohicans. And so I'm actually good, because I have tried before, and I remember finding the writing a little stilted, and because it's partly the time period, very early on, and but he just loves this book, and I like to trust Kyle's judgment.
And you're talking about Kyle Yankee.
Kyle Yankee, I'm sorry, Kyle Yankee, one of our teachers here at Highlands, and at the and at memoriacollege.org.
That's right, he is.
So anyway, so I'm reading that. I've always been of the opinion that Mark Twain was maybe right about James Fenimore Cooper and the way in which this was written. He wrote a whole piece, Mark Twain did, making fun of of Cooper, and it's a great read. It's really very funny. And then there's a book I teach every year in my intro to classical education at Memoria College. And I always forget about it, and I come, and it's one of the, I think, the fourth of the five sessions we have, called "Smiling Through the Cultural Catastrophe" by Jeffrey Hart, and it talks about this whole, what is the history of this whole Athens-Jerusalem dynamic that plays itself out over 2,000 years. How did Christianity, how did it deal with the learning of the pagans? And this is the best account. He tells the story. He calls it the great narrative.
Why don't we sell it?
It's a good question.
I thought it was out of print.
I think I've asked you this question before.
It's not out of print because we have to get
it's still
permit.
print.
We have to pay a royalty to put the piece of it that he uses in his class on our website.
Yeah. Right.
Or on the college website.
Yeah. So, so it still is in print. By Jeffrey Hart was a senior editor at the Old National Review magazine when William F. Buckley was running that. And he was a literature professor at Dartmouth. And he brings this literary mind to this issue. It's just brilliant. Yeah.
Okay. Paul?
I'm still working on everything I've been working on.
Yeah.
Mary Poppins.
Oh, yeah.
The Seahawk, and Confederacy of Dunces.
Yeah, a lot stacked up there.
Just whatever I feel like listening to or reading, whenever I have a
Is
few minutes
Mary
here or there.
Poppins doable?
Oh, yeah.
You like it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And it's very, it's very episodic too. Like you can just read a chapter and be like, I'm good,
Yeah.
But there's she's one of those writers that has that magic to them when you read them.
Yeah.
Tanya?
I finished The Seahawk.
Did you?
I did like it better than I liked the beginning. It's just so over the top. It's just like.
It's a pirate story.
What
do you expect?
It is. And it feels like a 1920s movie.
And haven't we established you don't really like stories with boats?
Oh, I
Remember
really
that?
don't, but I do like Sabatini.
Okay.
But yes,
I always feel like Sabatini is a little bit over the top. Like he is,
but this one to me seemed extremely over
It's like
the top.
going through the ride at Disneyland, the Pirates of the Caribbean, and saying, well, that was a little over the top. Yeah.
I mean the whole thing with him kidnapping her.
Mm-hmm.
I just felt like this one went a little bit further than, and then she's like being sold as a slave. I felt like this one just kind of went all the way as far as you could go, really, and stay. I don't know. I am reading A Tale of Two Cities, which is for the Crescent Hill Teachers Book Group, and I just, I love Dickens anyway, but this is so brilliant, and it's so different from anything else. He's known for his Great Expectations, Oliver Twist, David Copperfield type of writing. And this is so different. But his writing is just, this book is brilliant, which I knew. I've read it, probably twice before. But that's the kind of book. That's why it's classic, right? Because every time you pick it up, you just think again, this is brilliant.
I finally, I haven't read all of Dickens' novels. I think I've read most of them. And I think that was the last one I read. I didn't like it as much as the others.
Oh, gosh.
And, with Dickens, it takes a while. You have to read into the story a good ways until it takes hold. That's just the norm with Dickens. But I felt like in Tale of Two Cities, it really took a even longer time to really get into and care for the characters.
It's completely the opposite.
I
Really?
do too. I think it's completely
I'm going to read
opposite.
it again.
I think you're immediately in the middle of A Tale of Two Cities. But his characterization is so good. But the other thing that strikes me about it is that this is a serious book. The other ones are full of comic characters and comic events, even if they are,
Even if
he's
the story
obviously
is a serious story. It's still,
yes, but even in A Tale of Two Cities, there's all this comedy that is stuck in, just lines, just these pithy little lines that he'll make that it's just brilliantly written.
Sounds delightful.
Yeah, it is.
I'm about a third of the way through Fountains of Silence. I'm really liking it.
Now, who?
Ruta Sepetys, she actually went to Hillsdale. She graduated from Hillsdale. She does a lot of historical fiction, and this is set in Spain after the war. It's set in the 50s. And it's fascinating. I even have been starting to read more about Spanish history in that time. There's so much that you hear bits and pieces, but you don't really. Anyway, I'm liking it so far.
Oh, good.
It's quite the epic, though. It's big.
I've never read anything by her.
Kaylee likes her a lot. I'll send you a link to the book.
Okay, send me
she's
a
got
link.
a lot. Yeah.
Because I need more to read.
I know. You got a stack. We all do. Well, I think that brings us to a listener question. We would love to hear from you. If you have one, you can email us at podcast@memoriapress.com, just like Lauren did. She says, I've seen some online homeschool personalities promoting the idea of using the McGuffey readers as a core of their homeschool curriculum. What do you think? Thanks, Lauren.
I like the McGuffey readers. I don't know that I would make them the core of my homeschool curriculum, but they were in, I'm trying to remember how old my oldest son was, probably second or third grade. And I did have one of our friends took some of, a couple of, my friend Mary and my kids, and she would take them like one morning a week and do school. And I think she was using the McGuffey readers as like a grammar and writing course, and they would have to copy. They copied from the McGuffey readers, and it had to be, everything had to be spelled correctly, punctuated correctly. And I thought that was a great I thought that was a great use of a third grader's time.
Mhm.
And they're they're old fashioned because they are old.
Mhm. Are they textbooks? Can you explain more what they are?
Well, I wish I'd brought one.
They're readers.
They're readers, and they're on different levels, and they're just little stories. Sometimes it'll be a poem. I'm trying to think, there's some fiction in there, but I think there's like little science things too. I think it's like everything. So I can see why you would think it could possibly be the core. I feel like it's not enough to be, that was one little facet of my son's homeschool. I can't imagine how I would have turned that into the core.
Mm-hmm.
I think we would have been done with school.
Yeah. Well, people probably mostly don't know that they're, at the time when the McGuffey readers were popular, which was the 19th century, mid-late 19th century, there were a whole bunch of different readers out there. People think they see the McGuffies and they don't see they don't understand it. This was just one of the many readers that had been put out. There were the Baldwin and Bender readers. I have a whole copy of the Robert E. Lee readers.
Really?
Yeah. I guess after the war, he was, but they all had they were all pretty much the same in terms of the kind of content they had, but they were a little bit different in emphasis. So like in the McGuffey readers, it's all very American. It's mostly American history and the stories about the founding fathers and George Washington chopping down the cherry tree and all that stuff. But the Baldwin and Bender readers, James Baldwin was the Baldwin in Baldwin and Bender's. He's one of the great writers for young people at the turn of the century. And so those readers have a lot more classical stories from Roman history and Greek history and all that than the McGuffies do. They all had their own peculiarities. But, I was just talking about them the other day because somebody was saying, well, we didn't ever really have a national curriculum. Well, yeah, we had a de facto national curriculum. We actually did. And it was the McGuffey readers and all these other readers, which had pretty much the same kind of content to them. And that's what everybody had. And, that was at a time when, most people weren't educated past eighth grade if they were educated at all. And these books were basically meant to give you a wide cultural literacy up until the eighth grade. And then you went on to something more advanced.
And it sounds like some groups want to still apply them today.
I would apply them today. I think they would be nice to have in your curriculum. The word core is what, I guess you could turn it into a science lesson and a history lesson, depending on which part you're reading. But really, for me, it was just a reader. It was helping my son with his reading fluency and, reading out loud and the copying. He was copying copious amounts of material from every week from the McGuffey readers. I don't know how many he actually copied the entire thing of. And I thought that was a great exercise in emulating what good writing looked like.
Well, we should probably point out that, I know when Cheryl was developing the curriculum, we looked at all kinds of things when we were developing, and McGuffey's was one of them. And so, I think we like to think that what we included in our curriculum was the good stuff out of places like the McGuffey readers, but also the good stuff from other places, which you wouldn't get if you were just doing the McGuffies. But one of the nice things about them is they were graded. There were, I think the McGuffies had like 8 readers.
Something like that. I had them all.
And so it was the de facto curriculum. And so it was nice to be able to say, because if somebody wanted to know how well educated you were, they would ask you, so which reader are you in?
Interesting.
They say, I'm in the 3rd reader or I'm in the 5th reader.
Which that's like those one-room schoolhouses, like Anna
That's
Marie
what they
Gables.
used.
That would be that would be like that would be the only textbook necessarily that they would have.
Yeah, that's right.
And so they would have to do everything with it. Which for a basic education, you could make that happen. It feels like a lot of work to me to make it maybe deep enough. But for reading, I think they're charming.
Okay. Well, Lauren, we hope that helps you. Now, on to the larger portion of the show. We're going to stay with listener questions and answer Donna. She emailed us too at podcast@memoriapress.com. She gives a little bit of her background, which I'm going to share. I think that's helpful. And she asked several really wonderful questions about classical education. And I thought she asked so many good questions, we could just turn it into a show. I think we will have plenty to talk about. So Donna wrote us and she says, she's describing her background, and she says that she has a master's in classical studies pedagogy, and she's almost through her second year of teaching logic and humanities at a classical school. And so she explains, I'm not new to classical education, the school version, but she used to homeschool with classical education, and now she's teaching it. So she's not a stranger to this universe, as it were. And she says, with all the different versions of classical education, are there fundamentals that are required to be classical? Or has everyone taken from the bag of classical education their favorite pieces, and as long as they come from the classical bag, it's classical education? I want to start with that question. So good, right?
It is good.
It's a great question. I actually like the idea of the bag of classical education, but I mean, it's a different way of just saying the tradition, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there is a tradition, and that tradition starting with the Greeks and the Romans, but is really perfected in Christianity in the Middle Ages and High Middle Ages, right? Like that's and the Renaissance, like it all, like that the Greek and Roman stuff gets re-highlighted again, but you have scores of educators through the centuries that have contributed to what that tradition is, but all guided from a perspective of that reality was created by God. I mean, this is what we end up in the Christian sort of what we would say the fullness of, that creation's created by God. It's inherently knowable by us, and that it's worth knowing, and that in knowing reality and exercising that knowledge and working with it, that we will end up with wise and virtuous humans. And
that's the big picture.
That's the big picture.
So we've zoomed way out.
Yes, way out.
Got it. Okay.
Paul's a good zoomer out.
A zoomer outer, I guess.
He zooms out well.
But I think that's sort of like the like if we're going to say the bag of classical education, I think that's the bag we should be drawing from.
That's a container.
Right. But you can't do everything in that bag. That is true.
Correct.
So you can't, and our curriculum has changed over the past 20 some years. You know, it used to include Livy, it used to include Herodotus, it used to include several authors that it doesn't include now. You can't get to all of it. So you have to decide, do I want to do Cicero or Livy? But you are still drawing from classical authors from those time periods every year throughout your students' education for all of the big picture reasons that Paul gave.
So then under that umbrella, are there, to classical education, some universal categories or subjects that we say these have to be in your program if you are saying it's classical?
Can I zoom out a little bit again?
Oh, yeah.
Which not just content.
He's just zooming all around the
But I think we need to talk about content and methodology or pedagogy, right?
Yeah, those are two different things.
Those are
yes.
And probably the goal, right? I mean, because what I'm thinking about there is the idea of formation, and that we actually do have a picture of the student that we want at the end.
There is an outcome we are going for.
We are going
and that
for
is
a particular
particularly
outcome.
classical.
Yes.
Particular to classical education.
Well, classical education hopefully helps us reach that outcome.
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
It is a tool to reach the outcome of just becoming human.
So we've got the content, the methods, and the outcome.
Yeah. I think, Martin, is there anything we need to add to that?
Latin, hello.
Well, that's going to get,
that's
we're getting
the
into content.
Yeah,
We're getting there, but just.
Still zoomed, remember?
Oh, sorry.
Well,
Zoom me back out.
Yeah, to me, the short answer to the question, what is classical education, and you got this bag of stuff and you got all these different approaches to it and everything, is what it actually was. I mean, if you can say, what is classical education? It's what classical educators did. It's not some new theory of some new pedagogical insight, like even if they're good pedagogical insights, like Dorothy Sayers' 3 stages of learning, that was unknown. No one would have even thought of that because it was based on modern psychology, which didn't even exist until the end of the 19th century. What did they do? And so you have the history of it, and you have the early education of the Greeks and the Romans, which I think they were trying to perfect some kind of education as they were going along. And then the medievals come along, and the medievals clean everything up and make it orderly and all this stuff. So you have, the medievals who are Christians, and they're taking all this stuff from ancient times and they're melding it into a system of Christian education. But it's classical because a lot of they're basically looking at what came down to them from Athens and in Rome, and processing that through the lens of a Christian view of things. And so they're developing this education that basically comes down to us. And there weren't really schools, so to speak, until the Middle Ages, as we know them. And so they developed the concept of a school. And so, when you're looking at classical education, you're asking, what is the purpose of it? It's to develop a better an ideal human being, to approximate a good human being as much as you can through instruction. And it's and you're doing that by passing down this tradition through the liberal arts, the arts and the sciences, the skills you have to know, the intellectual skills you have to know, and the sciences, the bodies of organized systematic knowledge that we've developed over the 2,000 years, history, literature, philosophy. Those are the human sciences, the moral sciences. And then you have the natural sciences and all that. So that's what it's made up of, right? That's what constitutes it.
So you're saying that's the content.
That's the what Aristotle would have called the material cause of something. What is it composed of? What do you do? Mm-hmm. And those are the things you do.
And even in this country, this would be the Puritans would have brought this with them, this education with them.
Absolutely.
Harvard and Yale were founded on this type of education.
They were founded by the Puritans, and probably the best educated person in modern times, if you take modern back to that era, was
Cotton Mather.
Cotton Mather. Thank you. I'm just writing an article on this. I can't even remember it. Cotton Mather. Cotton Mather went to Harvard when he was 11 years old. And before you got into Harvard, you had to have read the classics in the original languages to get in. Mm-hmm. And his great disappointment, no, very few people seem to know this, his great disappointment, Cotton Mather, was that he didn't get the presidency of Harvard. It went when he was up for it, and it went to somebody else. So it was really the great disappointment in his life. But the people who went to Harvard at that time, in the 17th century, you had to speak Latin in class. Mm-hmm. At Harvard.
Yeah. Okay,
I think the point I'm making is the definition of it shouldn't have changed, and it didn't change until fairly recently.
That's a good point.
Is that we've had this education that he's just given us the history of, and then we're the ones who let it go. Not just us, not just America, but we let it go recently. It is part even of American history, and we're a very young country. Why we let it go, I don't know. That's a pod for another day.
We changed our ideas. There's a lot of debate about what a human being really is. So if the thing you're trying to create you can't even agree about, then good luck with that. So
what would you tell Donna what are some of the essential components?
Latin is essential. Okay. And that's the big thing for me now is there are classical educators who say Latin is not essential. And it has always been essential. I don't know why we would suddenly decide it's not essential, except that it's difficult. And we don't want to do difficult things anymore.
And we don't understand the reason for it. I mean, everyone's talking about thinking skills and how important thinking skills are. Okay, well, you got math and you've got language. Those are your basic subjects, right?
Sure.
Well, in math, it's mathematics, it's arithmetic, it's geometry, it's all those things. That's what you're doing. Nobody seems to question those too much anymore. But on the language side of the curriculum, it's Latin.
What else?
Classical history.
Which
Paul's already.
Well, classical history with and classical literature, the stories we tell ourselves, right? That's we're passing on Western civilization, and the stories we tell ourselves are important, all the way back from the Greeks and the Romans, but the Middle Ages too. Like all of our entire story is important. Our recent history, but also the history from a couple thousand years ago, because that still affects us in our day. But it tells us who we are, and so that's important. I think those are the things that would be unique to classical education and the content, right?
But also, you used the word universal, or you did. Somebody did.
Yeah.
But, so those things, even Western civilization, but I think any student can benefit from reading Cicero or Homer or Virgil, because it's not just about the places that they lived. It's the things that they did and the way that they did them, and the virtue, what do you call those virtues?
The cardinal virtues?
The cardinal virtues. All of those things are in all of this. So
and the questions they asked, right? They were raising
those
questions.
big questions without having the revelation of God that we have. But they felt it. They felt that need to understand where they came from and their own purpose in this life that they've been given. So they asked all the right questions. They just didn't have the full answer.
And the other thing I was thinking about this a couple of weeks ago, there's so many ways you can look at classical education. There's 1,000 ways you can define it that are all correct. They're all, going toward this one central thing. But I was thinking, so what are the faculties of the mind you're trying to develop? Well, your intellect, right? Your pure intelligence, and your imagination, which is done through primarily literature. Those are the two faculties you're trying to develop, and that requires these, skills type of subjects, and it requires reading the great stories that our civilization has produced. That develops our imagination. It tells us how people it makes us see how things work. Intellect, you can know, but only through the imagination can you see. And so it's like a, dual vision on reality.
But to zoom that in even closer. So our intellect and our imagination are the things that are leading us to being virtuous people, understanding what virtue is.
Yeah. Those are the means to that end.
At the risk of maybe getting a little too complicated here, I would say, and this maybe brings us a little bit to method, but if we're talking about the content, one of the things Martin mentioned was like the natural sciences. But this applies to literature too. Like it can be taught in a way that is inconsistent with the cosmology. We were talking about last night about using the word cosmology. Our way of understanding the world. And so if we're teaching science as purely just understanding the microcosm or the parts of a thing and not actually understanding the thing, right? That's why we start with, let's learn about what an insect is and all the different kinds of insects. Let's learn what a tree is and all the different kinds of things, everything we know about a tree, because the way we see the world is that those things are there's a reality to that thing. It's not just that we see wood with leaves on top and we're saying we're going to call that a tree, but there's actually something there that our God-given intellect allows us to perceive and understand what that thing is
and appreciate.
And so the way we present that to the students is as a whole, not merely just the whole is the sum of its parts. So it's the same thing with literature. Instead of just digging into all the parts and knowing the characters and the setting and the plot, and that's enough, we're asking, no, what does this mean? There's meaning here in this story, and we need to think about that, right? And so there are. I would invite Donna to not just say, what pieces can I pick out of the bag, but how do I jump into the bag? How do I become a part of that tradition such that the way that I'm going to educate, whether it's in a school or a homeschool setting, is fully a part of that tradition?
Which I think is that what she's asking, because she is teaching humanities at a school. And I think that, and she has a master's in classical studies pedagogy. So I do think she's in the bag.
I think she's in the bag and maybe confused, because she even says, which I think is a great question, what aspects of classical are fundamental and which are non-essential? And that makes me think there must be some things that aren't absolutely vital, because Tanya, you mentioned that even what we offer changes. Sometimes we realize, oh my goodness, we don't have time to do that.
That's
you
right.
have to be selective, because you only have a limited number of years with your child at home.
Yes.
And you have to fill it with what you, are thinking
or with
is
your
the
students
most.
in a school. That's right. And that's, that is a difficult thing. There is so much good stuff and you want to do it all. I remember when I was teaching, we would get toward the end of the year and I would be in a panic because I felt like I had so much left to give to my students and I just didn't have the time. And so I had to stop and tell myself, this is 1 year of their education. You are just 1 year. And it's not that because they're ending their year with you, that they're not going to get all of this other great stuff. But it is, as a teacher, frustrating to think I don't have time to impart everything to them or to show them everything that I feel like they would benefit from. So I think that the school has to make the decision. A homeschooler can make the decision more independently, but for a school, and a lot of problems, and Martin talks about this a lot with schools, is they don't have a curriculum. They don't have a set curriculum. It's up to every single, like the teacher can make their curriculum. So then that teacher leaves and somebody else makes a different one.
And then
and
the progression is
all kinds of
or
things
you
wrong with
change
that.
the program in third grade that's supposed to prepare you for the program in fourth, fifth, and sixth grade, and by the time they get there, they've changed the programs in fourth, fifth, and sixth grade. You can't do that. There has to be order in the curriculum in order to get anywhere.
So regardless of what you do, it needs to be consistent and it needs to be well thought out and it needs to be not just a plan for third grade, but a plan that takes you where you want your students to go ultimately.
That sounds like the classical core curriculum that you just said there.
Yes, or you could just use Memoria Press because we've already done all of that.
There you go.
We've done that for you. But that doesn't mean because we have a class on Cicero that you need to do Cicero necessarily. You could do somebody else that talks about the government. Who would that be?
Plato.
Republic.
But you need to, yeah. But you do need to think about one isn't necessarily better than the other. One may be more accessible than the other. I think Cicero is probably more accessible for me than Plato, but maybe not.
Yeah, well, and it also depends on where they fit chronologically. Like, if you're going to jump in and try to read political theory from the scholastic period, 1200s, like what are they?
What do you need to?
What are they
prepare for
assuming?
that?
Right, right. But I also think we need to approach this question from like we could get into the nitty gritty of like this author, you could leave. This author you really need, or you could look at it from the principle of the thing, right? Like the principles are mastery of language, mastery of mathematics, right? So you got your quantitative and your linguistic capabilities, and that you know your culture, but also that out of that you come out of it as a formed virtuous person.
Mhm.
And so that I mean, because we can focus on the academics, what we're actually going to teach, but I think the main goal is we actually want virtuous Christians to come out of the school,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so even if you're teaching all of this content we're talking about, and you're not enforcing virtuous behavior outside of the classroom at school,
Mhm.
then there's something lacking in your classical school.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, you're wanting them to know things, all the important things, and have a mind that's trained to know better through the 7 liberal arts. But then you also want them to be good.
Mhm.
You want them to know, and you need to, what's to know and what you're supposed to do. It's the intellectual stuff and it's the moral stuff. And the moral stuff, a school's role in moral formation is, the exemplar that the teacher is supposed to be, right? But even more importantly, it's what you're reading. Really, literature is the best way to teach character formation because, again, you're showing it to them. You're not just trying to abstractly explain it to them. Some abstract course in ethics is an intellectual exercise. It's not really an ethical exercise. But a story that shows you what a good person is and how they act and what a bad person is and the model to emulate and the model to avoid, that's going to teach you what it is to be a moral person.
Mm-hmm. I think that's helpful. So you take particular content, knowing where you want to lead them at the end.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be one of our distinctives. Although, wouldn't you say, though, other programs are going to say, well, we want virtuous people too, or our outcomes are good citizens.
Yes, but I think the salient difference in classical education
Mm-hmm.
is that the virtues and the Christianity
Mm-hmm.
and the morality, all of that is embedded in what we do. It's
Mm-hmm.
not that we are not taking a position that all knowledge is neutral and we're going to attack Christianity on top of that, but that Christianity is inherent in morality, ethics is all inherent in all of it,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because
Mm-hmm.
for us to know about the natural world, well, then that brings up the question of what is our place
Mm-hmm.
to be able to do something with this that we know about the natural world,
Mhm.
right? Or and so there are programs out there, I think, that don't try to be classical, but they do want to form virtuous students, but instead of going and looking at the foundation of what they're spending all of their time on,
Mhm.
they're trying to then just layer something on top, right? Like a virtue program
Mm-hmm.
that we're just
Mhm.
going to do on top.
Instead of it being an inherent part.
Yeah, we're going
of
to do the
right.
what we're
character
reading.
trait of the week.
Mm.
That doesn't
Right.
teach you anything.
Right. And so, I mean, those things can be helpful when it's an outworking of what they're actually doing in the
Mhm.
classroom. But to think that you could teach, Roman history and all of the decisions they're making, we're not going to learn from and judge, right? To see the causes, the consequences, go, oh, he shouldn't have done that. Or he should have done this other thing, right? Like if we're looking that learning Roman history is an amoral exercise, then we're divorcing in the child's mind the idea of knowledge that actually drives you to action.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
That's helpful.
and I've just been working on an article about this whole idea of literature morality. The only context in which you can determine whether an action is good or bad is a story, because there's all kinds of things that are assumed there. And if it's out of the context of a story, it's hard to tell whether it's a good action or a bad action, because the same action can be right in one story and wrong in another. And this is why stories are important in moral formation, is because you can see that in this particular story, that this is what the person should have done. And then that translates into your own life, which is also a story. There's a beginning, a middle, and an end.
Mm-hmm.
And the actions that you take are right or wrong depending on what exactly is going on at that moment and who you're dealing with and all that.
And you really do get those epic ancient stories give you such a good look into humanity, like the Iliad, when Patroclus, Achilles' best friend, dies because his pride said, I'm not going to go help fight in the war. So then Achilles knows he is responsible for his best friend's death because he failed. His pride just got away from him. And then, at the end, when Priam has to beg Achilles for the corpse of his son, that he has to lower himself to this mortal enemy and beg, but not just that he's willing to do that, but that Achilles is finally empathetic.
His heart changes.
Yes. And all of that is just in that one little story that is, because it's an epic story. It's, it's a larger than life story that just, you can do it in literature as well. I said I was reading A Tale of Two Cities. All of that kind of stuff is in there as well. But there's something about those. But that's a story. Those epics, though, that just has everything in them.
And I mean, we are trying to make sure our students learn how to comprehend their reading, increase their reading levels, all of those things. But that is a portion of what we're doing, right? And that's what we're talking about here is that our kids do well in the SAT, or any standardized test. That's not the end goal, right? That's a byproduct of actually forming a human that is wise and virtuous.
And I would say another thing is the skill and ability to think, to reason. I feel like so much of what we have them do from when they're little to when they're seniors, when you can really see the fruit come, is you're helping develop a thinker.
Right, but you're doing it on their grade level.
Exactly, yeah.
You're doing it with age-appropriate topics. You're going to see the same themes in the Iliad that you are going to see in Charlotte's Web. And you just have to start pointing them out and helping them and all of that. Very simply, it doesn't take any time, but just that discussion of what they're reading is the thing that is going to make the difference. And they will become better readers as well. And they'll know their math facts and all of that other basic
critical
stuff.
Thinking, yeah.
But the ultimate goal, you can get to that ultimate goal with any number of classical authors. But I do think it's essential that you read those classic authors.
But and just another plug for Latin, because as a thinking skills subject, you mentioned thinking skills, because what are the two basic thinking skills are making distinctions and seeing resemblances. And that's what you have to do all over the Latin grammar because of the way it works. And so it's just that is the best mental training I know. And you pair that, and you can go on with logic, which is a more particular application of those skills in reasoning and rhetoric, how to persuade people. Those are the language skills. And then the math skills as well. Just arithmetic teaches you how to think, because you're doing the same thing in there on quantitative things. And you pair that with what's going on in stories where you're seeing the examples that you want to put before them. And, what else do you want out of education?
Right. Well, that might be a good note to end on. Well, Donna, thank you for writing us. We hope this was helpful on your journey in classical education. It seems like you're well on your way teaching and studying. So we enjoyed hearing from you. Thanks, guys, for helping out. We'll be back next time. Thanks for joining us today on Classical Etc. by Memoria Press. If you like what you heard, please like, subscribe, or share this episode or comment. We love to hear your questions and your comments. If you want to learn more about Memoria Press, please go to memoriapress.com. This has been Classical Etc. We're so glad you joined us, and we'll see you next time.